Good evening, everyone. My name is Gino Granato, and tonight we have a very special Hall Zone episode. We are live for the first time in Hall Zone history. Tonight, we will be discussing NBA small forward Cooper Flagg winning Rookie of the Year, the 2026 NFL Draft winners and losers, the postponement of Live Golf, and the Indiana Fever picking up Caitlin Clark's fourth-year option, and what that means for the rest of the league. This is Hall Zone. Cooper Flagg, the first overall pick for the 2025 NBA Draft, has won Rookie of the Year. The Dallas Mavericks small forward averaged 21 points and 6.7 rebounds per game on 46.8% shooting from the field. However, Flagg is not an ordinary Rookie of the Year winner. Coming into the season, expectations surrounding Flagg went through the roof. During his time at Duke, he dominated the league with elite defense, scoring ability, athleticism, and basketball IQ. Coming into the NBA, Flagg was projected to win the Rookie of the Year and has the potential to be the face of the league. He's now the second youngest Rookie of the Year winner behind only LeBron James, and 19 years old and 112 days as of April 12th. Flagg also joins NBA legend Michael Jordan as the only rookies to lead their teams in total points, rebounds, assists, and steals. He finished the season with 1,473 points, 466 rebounds, 316 assists, and 84 steals, beating out his Charlotte Hornets rookie, Knippel. But the race was closer than expected. Flagg earned 56 first-place votes, while Knippel won 44 first-place votes. That 26-point gap is the second smallest gap for Rookie of the Year. The smallest gap for Rookie of the Year was in the 2021-2022 season when Scotty Barnes beat out Evan Mobley for Rookie of the Year by only 15 first-place votes. Knippel averaged 18.5 points and 5.3 rebounds per game on 47.5% shooting from the field. Flagg told the media after obtaining the award, quote, "This is a great honor. I'm grateful to receive the award and thankful to everyone in the Dallas Mavericks organization who believed in me." End quote. Flagg continues by thanking his teammates and continuing to work towards securing a championship for the city of Dallas. Philadelphia 76ers shooting guard VJ Edgecombe finished third with 96 votes and one second-place vote. Edgecombe averaged 16 points and 5.6 rebounds per game with 43.8% shooting from the field. However, the Dallas Mavericks are the only team out of these three rookies that did not make the NBA playoffs, stirring up some controversy on social media. Fans brought back the argument of what is more important with an award, individual or team success. Historically, the award favors individual performances, with players like Kevin Durant and Victor Wembanyama winning Rookie of the Year despite their team not having the most successful season. Looking ahead, the Mavericks are now building around Flagg and will look to the 2026 NBA Draft and free agency to become a contender in the West again. Whoever you think the Rookie of the Year should be, all NBA fans can agree the league is in good hands. Speaking of the NBA playoffs, some games are happening right now. Currently, the New York Knicks and Atlanta Hawks are playing, with New York leading 3-2 in the series. Atlanta will try to force Game 7, and the Knicks will try to move on to the next round. Other games today are the Boston Celtics and Philadelphia 76ers, and the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves. Good luck to all teams today, and go Knicks. The 2026 NFL Draft saw a lot of chaos happen in its three-day event. SHU TV recently held a 4.5-hour live stream covering the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. Everyone at SHU TV had a blast, and make sure to check it out on YouTube. I'm extremely blessed to be able to direct and produce the live stream. With the first pick of the NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Indiana QB Fernando Mendoza. This is looking like a clear home run for the Raiders, as Mendoza was by far the best QB in the draft, and a position the Raiders needed the most. The Raiders are hoping that Mendoza can turn their franchise around. Other selections by the Raiders include offensive lineman Trey Zunn III and cornerback Jermon McCoy. McCoy was projected to be a first-round pick, but after an ACL injury in January 2025, the Raiders selected him in the 4th round, with many fans calling it the steal of the draft. We have New York Giants fans at SHU TV, and I know one of them wasn't too particularly happy with who the Giants did not take at 5. Instead, the New York Giants selected linebacker Arvell Reese of Ohio State. Known for his big frame, coming in at 6'4" and 240 pounds, he stood out from his days at Ohio State for his tackling and pursuit. 5 picks later, the New York Giants were on the board again because of the trading of defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence to the Cincinnati Bengals, a trade that shocked a lot of Giants fans, many who were unhappy because they were trading away their star defensive player, but in return, the Giants selected Francis Mauigoa, an offensive tackle out of Miami. The Giants hope that Mauigoa can protect their up-and-coming star quarterback, Jackson Dart. For our last recap, the Dallas Cowboys draft arguably the best defensive player in the draft in Alabama safety Caleb Downs, a much-needed position for the Cowboys, as their defense was ranked 30th in total defense, allowing 377 yards per game. Yikes. The Cowboys are hoping Downs can boost their secondary to playoff contention. Aside from Caleb Downs, the Cowboys selected defensive end Malachi Lawrence out of UCF. Described as, quote, high motor edge rusher with the length to get to the blocker's chest, end quote, the Cowboys hope Lawrence can fill in for the void that Micah Parsons left behind. Speaking of Micah Parsons, the controversial trade with the Green Bay Packers is now complete. Dallas receives defensive tackle Kenny Clark, defensive tackle Quinton Williams, defensive end Malachi Lawrence, cornerback Devin Moore, and defensive lineman L.T. Overton. And the Packers receive Micah Parsons. Let's see what Cowboys fans think of this. I think it was a great draft, and the trade proved to be worth it. Go Cowboys! There are also a couple of shocking trades during the draft. There are 8 total trades in the first round, and some between division rivals. The Cowboys traded up from the 12th pick to the 11th pick with the Miami Dolphins, so the Cowboys could select safety Caleb Downs. The Eagles send their 23rd overall pick to the Cowboys for the 20th pick, a controversial trade between fans of the division rivals. And then there was a trade between the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots to swap their 27th and 31st overall pick. A controversial headline coming out of the NFL draft was the San Francisco 49ers using AI to make decisions. 49ers GM John Lynch told reporters on Monday before the draft, quote, if you aren't using it, you're already behind, end quote. Analysts had their doubts before the draft, and the team did make some questionable picks during the event. The 49ers drafted 8 players, with highlights being Ole Miss wide receiver Deshaun Stribling in round 2, pick 33, Texas Tech defensive end Romello Height in round 3, pick 70, and Indiana running back Kaelon Black in round 3, pick 90. While analysts do claim that the 49ers did reach with their first 3 picks, they still have one of the best rosters in the league, with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner coming back off injury, and Christian McCaffrey putting up MVP numbers last season. And there's George Kittle. San Francisco also signed wide receiver Mike Evans that will open up more space on the field, and also gives quarterback Brock Purdy another weapon to use. Stay with us as we dive into the postponement of Live Golf. We'll have more information on that after the break.
For all, forever. A promise that began 170 years ago. and still guides us today. A legacy of knowledge, faith, and transformation, born of vision, built on community. We are one university with one mission, to create an immensity of future good, as Mother Seton once hoped, to prepare minds, to open doors, to lead with compassion. This is Seton Hall. Driven by purpose, united by faith, reason, and possibility. And now, a campaign to elevate every Setonian, for all, forever. A historic goal to touch every corner of our university and every member of our community. We prepare leaders through scholarship. We enrich education through immersive experience and global reach. We strengthen our cornerstones with academic excellence, research, and faith. Because every gift touches every student, today and for generations to come. For opportunity, for discovery, for community. Join us in shaping the next 170 years. For all, forever. A campaign for a greater Seton Hall.
Welcome back. The scheduled June Live Golf event in New Orleans has been postponed. Reports claim the postponement comes from financial uncertainty between Live Golf and the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund. The Live Golf League, a golf league that has been running since 2021, the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund reportedly poured billions into the tour for its 4 years of play, but the funding will come to an end at the end of the season. Recently, the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince and the PIF chairman, along with other Saudi officials, outlined a new financial future, and it did not include any investments into Live Golf. Other concerns were a huge part of this postponement. Conflicts with Live Golf stated were scheduling conflicts, weather concerns, and attendance. Live Golf CEO Scott O'Neill is also in some hot waters, as he reportedly sent an email to all Live Golf employees noting the 2026 season will go exactly as planned, uninterrupted, and at full throttle, end quote. I don't think it's going as planned, Scott. However, O'Neill clarified his comments that the Live Golf staff would have to, quote, work like crazy, end quote, during times of uncertainty. This delay does not come with any consequences either. The state of Louisiana set aside roughly $7 million to bring the event to New Orleans. The state reportedly had to pay $5 million as a hosting fee, and $2 million of the money went to course improvements. However, Live Golf will repay the state $1.2 million and no longer be eligible to receive the remaining $4 million, a huge blow to the event. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and Louisiana Economic Development Secretary Susan Borgias stated to the media that they, quote, look forward to maintaining our partnerships and collaboration that's supported the effort, end quote. Although there is uncertainty in the financial business, athletes are concerned as well. The athletes that were scheduled to participate in the Live Golf event will now be without a place to the circuit to prepare for the Open at Royal Birkdale. Live Golf sources said the league is trying to avoid the summer heat to not only ensure the safety of the athletes, but to ensure the course is in the right condition to play in. For the attendance, Live Golf wanted to avoid attendance and TV viewership conflicts with the World Cup that will also be in the U.S. Multiple Live Golf players are discussing ways to return to the PGA Tour. However, the PGA Tour is now choosing what players to bring back. Players most likely to come back are Bryson DeChambeau, a two-time U.S. champion, and Jon Rahm, a two-time major winner. The next scheduled event for Live Golf is May 7th through May 10th at Trump National Golf Club in Washington, D.C. However, because of the pull of funding from Saudi public investment funds, the future is uncertain for the event. Shifting over to the WNBA, the Indiana Fever have picked up Caitlin Clark's fourth-year option, a no-brainer for the first overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft. Clark will now be under contract with the Fever through the 2027 season, and her rookie salary will increase to around $597,000. Caitlin Clark has more than proved herself with the Fever and is now looking for a max contract extension that is worth up to $1.3 million plus per year. The Indiana Fever guard earned 2024 WNBA Rookie of the Year and has earned all WNBA honors as a rookie. This also enables Clark to renegotiate her fourth-year salary and agree to a 3-year contract under the EPIC, Exceptional Performance on Initial Contract provision in the new WNBA Collective Bargaining Agreement. However, there are some concerns with her long-term health. Clark suffered a right groin injury in 2025 and later compounded by a bone bruise in her left ankle in rehabilitation, limiting her to only 13 games that season and forcing her to miss the rest of the 2025 season. However, Clark is expected to be fully healthy for the 2026 season. Although Clark has injury concerns, the Fever have been making moves to build around their young star. In early April, the Fever signed forward Aliyah Boston to a record-setting contract extension under the new CBA. Boston signed a 4-year, $6.3 million extension with the Fever. The Fever also signed Kelsey Mitchell to a 1-year, $1.4 million Supermax deal. The Fever are currently in the preseason with their dominant victory over the Liberty, winning 109-91. However, Clark struggled with 7 points on 2 for 10 shooting in her first game back. The Dallas Wings and Indiana Fever is going on right now, so we'll see if Clark improves from her last game. At the same time, many people around the league urge fans not to overreact to a preseason game. Clark has already proven herself throughout her basketball career that she can bounce back quickly from difficult performances. Coaches and teammates also noted that Clark's conditioning, confidence, and movement look significantly improved compared to earlier in her recovery process. While there is uncertainty about Clark's long-term health and play, as one of the most prolific players in the league, the Fever seem to aim to keep their franchise star long-term. We don't talk about betting odds here on Hall Zone, but Clark is a favorite to win MVP this season. If Clark does win MVP, she'll be eligible for a Supermax deal in 2025, which is 20% of the team's salary. In other news, Clark recently announced a children's picture book that is based on her own life to be published in November, titled Extraordinary, A Life Extra to Reach Big Dreams. According to Clark, the book focuses on the importance of hard work, determination, support systems, and believing in yourself even during the difficult moments. The project reflects Clark's growing role as a mentor and role model for young athletes, especially young girls pursuing careers in sports. Coming up, we will have Anchor Point with Manny Pereira and Gabriel Garcia. Stay with us after the break. Welcome back to Anchor Point, the official debate show of Hall Zone. I'll be your moderator today, and joining me today is Manuel Pereira and Gabriel Garcia. Let's get into the first debate question. So, we all know the Mets haven't had the best season so far. It is early.
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
It's only April. It's only April. But let me start with my first question. Should the Mets fire Mendoza? Gabe, I know you're a Mets fan. Let's start with you.
The Mets could definitely benefit from probably Manny playing second base and me pitching on the mound.
I wouldn't go.
But I think the Mets are pretty notorious for having awful Aprils. I do have this one theory that every time the Mets start off so bad, we usually end off pretty good. We saw last year, this is part of my theory, we saw last year how they started really great. They had the best record going into May, and that was an awful season for the Mets. And I think an issue that they have, and a reason why I say they shouldn't fire Mendoza, is because they need to build a culture here. The Mets have had an issue where they have like 3 different managers in the past 4 seasons. I know when Lindor came to the Mets in 21, the manager at the time was Luis Rojas, who's now the third base coach for the Yankees. Then it switched to Buck. Buck was there for 2 years, I would say 2 or 3 years, and then now Mendoza. I think it creates so much instability. Changing managers all the time. And I know Mendoza is a newer manager. He came in 24. He was a coach for the Yankees. He didn't have prior head managing experience, and I think he's still building that experience. And I think the players in the locker room love Mendoza. They love him. Every interview that you've seen on Twitter, on Instagram, they're always backing up, and they're not blaming Mendoza for their awful start. And I think you definitely you can't put the blame on Mendoza here. You gotta look at the players for sure.
So I disagree. I think Mendoza should be gone. And nowadays, especially as a manager, I would say they're not held as responsible as they were back then in terms of impact on wins and losses. We have so many analytics now. I mean, for a lot of these guys, computers make more decisions than the managers actually do. And I'm not saying that's the case with the New York Mets, but part of your job now, and what's really been amplified for managers, is the fact that they have to keep the clubhouse in check. And Mendoza hasn't really been able to do that. I mean, year 1 was magical. Yeah. You had a lot of good vibes, and I think managers are kind of vibe guys now more than ever, right? So
they drive that.
They do drive that, and we're seeing it in Atlanta more than ever. I mean, Snicker was his voice was growing dull in that clubhouse. They had a lot of injuries last year. That was the excuse for the Braves. Hey, what can Snicker do? Well, this year, Weiss comes in. They still have a ton of injuries, and they're winning a ton of games, and they're like 16-4 since he tackled Jorge Soler. That fires the guys up, and Mendoza really, I'm not saying that he's got to tackle someone, but he hasn't really shown the fire, been able to light a fire for this Mets team and for this clubhouse. And I just want to say something. I mean, a lot of people think that it won't do much, that it won't fix anything, and they'll go to the fact that only one team since in this century has fired a manager and gone on to win the World Series, which was kind of the expectation considering how much money the Mets have spent. They want to be a team that can win the World Series. That hasn't happened since 2003 when the Miami Marlins did it, but in the past 10 years, when teams have fired their managers, it's kind of worked. The 2016 Braves, their winning percentage went from 24% to 48%. Reds, 17% to 44% when they fired their manager. The Cardinals, when they fired Matheny, went from a 500 team to around a 60%, winning 60% of their games. The Phillies, when they fired Girardi and brought in Rob Thompson, who has since left, that year they were way under 500. If you remember that, they ended up making the World Series. Blue Jays, when they fired their manager in 2022, got up to a 62% winning percentage, went from 52.3, and then the Orioles last year, from 39% of their games, they started winning about 50% of their games last year after the firing of their manager, so Brandon Hyde. So I think it's something that it's kind of a scapegoat. I'm not saying it's all Mendoza, and I don't think that with these cases it's about, the manager was holding them back. I think it's more about like the players wake up, like, oh shoot, like the way that we're playing is costing people's jobs. So I think the Mets should make the decision to cut bait.
Yeah, I understand that, but look, Mendoza's working with what he got. I think Stearns had a pretty decent offseason. They got kind of what they needed. I don't agree with some of their signings. I'm not a big Polanco fan. I think the main issue for the Mets right now is more on the pitching side. You had David Pearson, who just got rocked by the Nationals this past series. Mendoza's not the one that's throwing the ball. He's not the one that's swinging the bat. So, I mean, you could kind of blame him for a little bit, or like putting Jared Young in the lineup. Like, why are you putting Jared Young in the lineup?
He's actually been hitting.
He's been
hitting. And not to cut you off, but I think the Mets' issues haven't really been the pitching as much as it has been the bats. How many players on the Mets that have played at least 20 games have an OPS over 700? Who wants to answer that question?
They struggled offensively.
Zero.
To begin the
It's zero.
season.
And we got Bo Bichette for that reason, for being the offensive guy with runners in scoring position. I know that was a really big issue for the Mets last season. Right now, he had a slow start, but I think he's kind of finding his groove. He's our highest batting average right now, and I think he's one of our most consistent hitters, other than Lindor is always awful in April, but Lindor is one of the better hitters in the lineup. But I just think you can't really put the blame on Mendoza because, again, he's not the guy that's out there doing it. We've seen these Mets games, they wanted to get defense, and we're making a bunch of like silly mistakes. I mean, PFPs have been an issue. I forgot who it was that made the error, but it was an error that it was a comebacker to the pitcher and overthrew the first baseman by a mile. And I think Mendoza's not at fault there. That's the player.
Yeah, but I would say the Mets are playing too much of a lackadaisical brand of baseball, which you guys all agree with. You mentioned the culture is an issue.
Yeah.
One way to change the culture is bringing a new manager. I mean, the Phillies are really a tremendous example. When Girardi was at the helm there, it was a very dull clubhouse, dull vibe in Philadelphia. Thompson comes in, and those guys just woke up. I think we need a change. Last year especially, with the way that the things went in the clubhouse, I blame some of that on Mendoza.
Okay.
The fact that Brandon Nimmo's been there for years and Pete Alonso's been there for years, and they had no problems ever. Then apparently they start having some friction with Lindor. Mendoza, you got to take care of that. You got to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'm probably being a little bit unfair here, but I think right now you're kind of desperate if you're the Mets and you're looking for anything to perhaps potentially bring a change. And I think the firing of Mendoza would be something. I agree, though, when it comes to Stearns and the construction of this ball club, I mean, awful. Yeah. I mentioned earlier, not one player on this team that has played at least 20 games, because obviously Juan Soto, he's been playing well, but he got hurt. He's only played 15 games this year. Not one of them have a OPS over 700, which is abysmal. 700 is about league average. So everybody on the Mets right now, other than Juan Soto, is hitting below league average. You mentioned Jared Young. Oh, why is he playing well? He actually has been playing pretty well, and he's been hitting the ball, but then he got hurt. He has a positive WAR. Positive WAR, which, by the way,
you don't have a lot of guys with positive WAR. I think we got like three guys.
It's 0 guys.
Yeah.
That have played at least 20 games, it's 0 guys.
The highest we got is 08, and that's Soto.
That's Soto. Yeah. So when it comes to guys that have played at least 20 ball games for this Mets club, not one has a positive WAR, or not one has an OPS over 700, which means no one is above league average in terms of hitting, and no one is above league average as a player, because at least WAR with your defense, that'll help you. So brought in Marcus Semien, that hasn't helped at all. I mean, it's just time to blow everything up if you're the New York Mets, and that starts with a manager. And I think in this deadline, you trade Peralta, and you trade Bichette, you trade a lot of these guys that are on this roster that you probably didn't anticipate having to trade, especially in the middle of the season. But I think it's time to blow everything up. Why? Okay, so why not? What is the point of keeping them?
Cohen is the money guy. Like, New York is such a big market, and
so
nobody in New York wants to see a rebuilding Mets team.
Okay, so when's the last time the Mets sold in the deadline? 2023.
23.
What happened the next year?
24.
They made
we got like nobody from the 23 like trade deadline affected the 24 playoff run.
But it worked. I mean, it worked. You had some young guys that also you made that trade with Peralta for Rogers last year as well. When you guys bought, I thought the Mets on paper had an excellent deadline, right? In 2025. And I think a lot of that was kind of unlucky, and maybe it did have to do with the clubhouse, which then you just give even more reason to fire Mendoza.
Just dead.
But I think that has to do with Mendoza. I think you got to cut bait. What good manager has ever had a dead clubhouse ever? Yeah. Name one. There's not one.
Because I think a big success for the 2014 was the players. I would maybe you say like, okay, Mendoza was the new manager. He was a new guy, so he was adding a little fire under them because he wanted to succeed as the first time manager. But you had guys like Jose Iglesias, Jesse Winker that were spark plug guys. I mean, you saw the energy they brought into this team, and then once they left, last year, like, there was no, oh my God, with Jose Iglesias. That great
Yeah, of
song.
course. It was a
But
good song.
It is a great song.
I think once, you know, they let those, like, style of players that have the heart and energy to play baseball, once they let those guys walk and go, I think that was kind of the start of the downfall.
I mean, that is part of the game of baseball. I don't think we should rely on Jose Iglesias, whom I love, by the way. I think he's
He had a
excellent.
resurgence that year, too.
He had an excellent year, but then next year with the Padres, he was way below league average. He hit about 230. So I don't think that would have sent the Mets to the World Series if Jose Iglesias was on the team last year. I really think there has to be a lot of change, especially in the front office. David Stern still thinks he's in Milwaukee.
Yeah,
I don't know
we're not
what's
playing
up with him.
Moneyball here. This
Yeah,
is New
exactly.
York. We cannot
So
play
last
Moneyball.
year, everyone talks about the start of the Mets and how good it was, but in reality, it was a lot of fool's gold. And you can call me a big Mets hater, probably. I really did kind of see it from a mile away. It was one of the only times in my entire life where I've been able to predict the team's exact record going into the year and get it right. I thought they'd win 83 games, and they won 83 games last year. And a lot of it had to do with the pitching staff that they built.
Yeah.
You can't rely on Griffin
Griffin
Canning to be your horse
that
and your
was an
ace.
awful injury.
It was an awful injury, but he can't be the guy
Yeah,
who
he
makes
can't-
or
he can't
breaks
be
it
the
for
guy.
you. It just can't happen. That's
Well,
poor roster
but that's why I
construction.
think the Freddie Peralta move was good, because we got
Okay.
that big name.
Freddie
ace
Peralta's
in.
a free agent next year.
Okay.
All
What
right,
is the
guys.
point of keeping him? No, we could end on this. What is the point of keeping Freddie Peralta as a Met this year?
You gotta let guys work through the struggle. That's a big thing for Mets. I feel like
That's true.
they always start off so bad. I'm gonna use Lindor as an example again. Lindor in 24, always awful in April. I don't know what's the guy's deal, but I think he was like almost second in MVP. Of course, he was playing in the same league as Shohei Ohtani, but you gotta let guys struggle. And I think Freddie Peralta is that guy where, like, once he gets over this hump, he's going to be a dominant arm in the East.
I agree, and I think that's even more reason to trade him, because the Mets are going to stink, and
All
you
right,
have
all
to
right.
get
the Mets don't want to
players.
rebuild. Man.
Great points, guys. You know, the Mets still have Brett Beatty. So
I actually like Beatty.
Brett Beatty,
Brett
Yeah.
Beatty's going to turn it up this season. All right, I want to move on to the second question. Can the Lakers make it to the finals? Gabe, let's start with you on this one.
I'm just going to flat out say no. I mean,
Okay.
you always got LeBron James. I don't know if I would call him my GOAT, but again, one of the greatest players of all time. I love watching LeBron James. But you can't rely on him and Luka to take the Lakers to the finals in such a stacked West, you know?
Yeah.
So the question is, can the Lakers make
Yeah.
the finals,
Can they
right?
make it?
Not will
But
the
you gotta
Lakers make the
be
finals.
confident. You're saying can.
Yeah, I mean, the question is can. It's can they? Like, can they make
Anybody
the
can make it to the
Can I
finals
get
if
a
anything
Can I
happens.
get, a 90 on my stats test? Like, probably not in my final. But like,
Same with
I
the
think
Lakers,
I
probably
can.
not.
Right? I'm
think
going to go into thinking I can. I think the Lakers can make the NBA Finals. Why? Because if you would have brought me on a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whenever the first round started, and asked me, can this Lakers team beat the Rockets in the first round of the playoffs with just LeBron James and Luke Kennard as your second star, I would have said no. I would have said they can't. I would have said they will not win this series. There's no way they will beat this Houston Rockets squad that is at least they'll win games with their defense. They have Udoka, obviously Şengün. Even if Durant misses a few games, I would have been here very confident, debated any Lakers fan and said that the Rockets were going to beat them. I have turned 180 completely since watching this series. And a lot of people are going to say, hey, the series is not over. Lakers have lost their last two. LeBron James is not going to be the only player in the history of basketball to blow a 3-0 lead. It's just not going to happen. That's my only reason for why this series is over. It's not going to be LeBron to be the first to do it, especially at this stage of his career. He's not going to want to walk out like that. And he's still getting it done. Averaging 22 points a game, about 9 rebounds, 6 assists in this playoff run.
Yeah.
Saw Luke Kennard play good basketball. And something that is key, we saw the Lakers go up 3-0 without Austin Reeves. Reeves is back. He's been pretty good, and he's averaging about 17 points per game his last two playoff runs, averages about 16 for his career in the playoffs. I think he's going to be another scoring option obviously he's going to be an option, but he's going to provide a boost for them going forward. And once Luka comes back, which projected in the middle of the second round, I mean, anything can happen against Oklahoma City. I want to give 1 point because a lot of people think that the Thunder are just going to walk through everybody. But we thought the same thing a lot of times in the past few years. Let's go over the last defending champions since 2019 and what they did in their run of defending their championship. The Raptors, in the bubble, they lost in the second round. Obviously, they lost Kawhi, so maybe you put that away. But that was a darn good Raptors team. They almost beat the Celtics that year. Then the Lakers. They won. LeBron got hurt. They fell to a 7th seed in 2021, and they lost to the Suns in the first round. The Bucks, after winning a championship. That was really a year where everybody thought that Milwaukee was going to run through the East. That was a Celtics team that was yet to be proven, and they beat them in 7 games. So Milwaukee lost in the second round. The Warriors lost in the second round to the Lakers, defending their title. The Nuggets, that was another team that everybody thought, like this Thunder team, was just going to run through everybody in the playoffs. And then they lost a shocker to the Minnesota Timberwolves that year in the second round. And then the Celtics last year, who went into that series? You're a huge Knicks fan, Gino. Did you seriously think the Knicks had any chance? Maybe you thought they had a chance, but did you think that series was going to go the way it did, even before Tatum got hurt?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, once they won those first 2 games because of Bridges, once they won those first 2 games in Boston, and then I'm like, okay, once we won game 1 in Boston, I was like, chances went up a lot because anything can happen in game 2, but then we had the advantage going to New York and taking 2 more games.
But I don't think anyone thought even the Knicks were going to even win game 1.
Yeah.
Like, it was in Boston, a team, what did Boston do to the Knicks in the regular season, especially going into that series before that? Just dismantle them. Yeah. Same way the Thunder do to the Lakers now. And I do think
I'm looking right here. They smacked their Lakers are 0 for 4 against the...
But with the way that the NBA and the parity that we've seen lately, I give the Lakers a chance, a solid chance, a better chance than anyone else is going to give them, especially when Luka comes back in the middle of that series, is they can kind of at least steal 1 game, just 1 game out of the first 3. Just steal 1 against the Thunder. I think the Lakers have a darn good shot to beat what's still a very young Thunder team.
I mean, yeah, but after the Thunder, you have to go through the Spurs. And the Spurs have, pound for pound, one of the best players in Wembanyama. If it's not SGA, if it's not Alexander, it's Wembanyama. What do the Lakers have an answer for Wembanyama?
So I'll be honest, I think, like, my pick objectively is I think San Antonio will make the NBA Finals. But that's not the question here. Can the Lakers beat the Spurs? 100%. What's the big gripe with San Antonio? Lack of experience. So Luka, been there, done that. LeBron, been there, done that. Definitely. We know LeBron James been there, done that.
Yeah.
Another player I haven't really mentioned, Marcus Smart, who is awesome in the postseason and has been awesome this year as well. Luka against OKC in that playoff run when they made it to the finals on the Mavericks, 25, 11, and 9 on 39% from 3. And even in the regular season, since he's gotten to the Lakers, we're going to take away the game where he got hurt, which is the most recent time that he played OKC. He's averaging 24 and 6. So Luka Doncic against this Thunder team plays an excellent brand of basketball. And let's not forget, guys, the Thunder did not walk everybody down last year in the postseason.
Okay.
There were I'm not trying to take credit away from the ring that they won. It was a legitimate ring. Obviously, I hate the Mickey Mouse ring stuff. But I will say that this is relevant information going into this postseason run, that the Thunder won 7 games against the Denver Nuggets, and if Aaron Gordon doesn't get hurt, a lot of people think that the Nuggets win that series. Part of basketball, but it's true. Same thing in the NBA Finals, Game 7. They kind of struggled at times against Indiana. And if Tyrese Halliburton would have been healthy in that Game 7, who knows? I'm not saying that we have to take credit away from OKC, but I will say that we cannot consider them to be the super dominant force that's just going to run through everyone, guaranteed, in this postseason. And I think the Lakers give them a good fight.
I mean, I think with the Thunder, yes, I know you have the pattern of, the winners always losing in the playoffs, but I feel like I don't see that with the Thunder. I think the Thunder are the younger team. They're hungry. I feel like they want to repeat. They got the clubhouse guys. They got guys that have a lot of energy and want to win. They want to build a winning brand in OKC. And I think them facing LeBron, kind of like the older guys like Doncic, they don't have that. I feel like, I know LeBron's kind of resurging, but they don't have that same fire that maybe the Thunder and even the Spurs have under them.
I personally disagree. At least watching these games, I would have probably said that going into this postseason because of kind of the way the Lakers were playing basketball, especially early on, kind of first half, even middle of the regular season, when LeBron was like, when they played the Thunder, like they're a championship team and we're just not, because they were playing terrible defense. Yeah. But DeAndre Ayton, I don't know what's gone into him, but he's looked excellent. Mentioned Marcus Smart is one of those guys that is a fireball on the court. And then LeBron James, who's hungrier than him. Like, we know that he feels like he's got nothing to lose. This is his last hurrah. I can't believe I'm going to say this on the air, but after watching this series and just, I mean, I love narratives and stuff like that, and just seeing him go on a 10-0 run with his son, like the James family went on a 10-0 run in a playoff game. Not at the rec, in an NBA playoff game. Not here in an intramural basketball game in Regan. It was in a playoff game. So that's incredible. And seeing that, I truly think after spending my middle school years debating everyone that would try to tell me that LeBron was better than Jordan, LeBron's my GOAT now. And considering that the GOAT, in my opinion, is playing basketball on the Lakers and is still playing at a high level, he's very hungry. I think that the Lakers can shock the world and potentially make the finals. They're not my pick, but I think they can do it.
Who is your pick?
The Spurs are my pick to win the West.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Spurs are my pick to win the
West. Wembanyama is a stud. I love watching him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
All right, guys, so we're going to get into our last topic here. Which team had the best NFL draft? Manny, I'll start with you here.
So I guess this can depend on perspective, but I think when it comes to most perspectives that one may have when it comes to this topic, the Raiders potentially had the best draft in the NFL. I believe that they had the best draft personally because of the impact that this draft is going to have on them. So very similar, although not the same, to a draft the Seahawks had the year they let go of Russell Wilson, where they just got so many impact players which they needed. And it was kind of the same thing where like they let go of Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll just got let go here in Vegas, right? And they bring in McDonald, and now we have Kubiak coming in from Seattle, actually. Going into a lot of weird Vegas, Seattle ties.
But, maybe something going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, who knows? But I truly think, there's some parallels there in that aspect. And I think Mendoza, obviously franchise quarterback, how more impactful can that be? That's the most impactful thing you can do is to get a franchise quarterback in the NFL. This is a team last year that stunk at everything. Right, 28th in passing yards per game, last in rushing yards per game. And I think this is the most interesting stat of them all, because perhaps the Raiders, with a good coach and a competent offense, will be able to make some serious noise next year. Maybe not win the AFC West, but maybe win 7 to 8 games. Is that serious noise? Probably not, but that's a huge jump, right? And it's this. They were 25th in defensive points per game, which is bad. Like, that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible, but they were 8th in the AFC, which is middle of the pack, in passing yards allowed per game, and they were 17th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed per game. So that doesn't really make any sense. You're kind of an average defense, but in terms of how many yards you allow per game, but in points, you stink it up. You're way worse than what maybe the other numbers suggest, and that has to do with turnovers. The fact that the defense was always on the field and the offense was always turning the ball over. They were 24th in the NFL in giveaways, and I think with a much better offensive line, now you have 2 legitimate running backs with Genty and the kid from Arkansas that they drafted. I think they're going to keep the ball out of harm's way. Mendoza only 6 picks at Indiana, and the Raiders are going to be a team that's going to be much better defensively than people think, and as long as they can be a little bit below average offensively, I think that this Raiders team can win 7 to 8 games, and a lot of it has to do with who they drafted on this board. So I think that's the most impactful singular draft in the entire NFL.
I mean, I think for me, with the Raiders looking at this draft, I feel like really the only impact guy that they really got was Mendoza, and we don't even know if he's going to start over Cuts. Mendoza wasn't even the consistent.
I don't know about that.
He wasn't even the best player in the draft. Let's be honest.
Who was the best player?
Yeah, okay, so who do you think?
The best player was Jeremiah Love.
Oh.
But he's a running back. At the end of the day,
just because he's a running back doesn't mean he's not the best.
Fernando Mendoza, if he is a franchise quarterback, then he's going to be the guy that impacts winning the most out of this draft, which I don't really mind or care what people's perspective is in ranking best players. What do we want to do? We want to win. And I think Fernando Mendoza, him just with the intangibles he has, obviously the arm talent, he's going to finally bring stability in that position, in this room and on this team. in Vegas, that has so much value. And a player that I think if the Cowboys would have picked, I'd actually pick the Cowboys to have had the best draft, that the Raiders ended up picking is McCoy from Tennessee.
I don't think so.
The only thing that changed was the fact that he tore his ACL. I mean, obviously health
but the thing is, as a corner, that injury, that ACL injury is going to affect his athleticism. But cornerback you have to be one of the most athletic people on the field.
But how many times, especially in this era, have we seen hyper-athletic guys tear their ACL, come back and be fine in any sport? We see it.
Gabe, let's go to you.
The ACL thing, I think of Rose there. He was never the same after that in basketball.
That was also 15 years ago.
That was 15 years ago. For me, Gino, you're gonna like this one. I got the Cowboys.
Let's go Cowboys.
I loved their first pick, trading up to get Caleb Downs. He did his stats don't look great numbers wise, but I feel like that's because they had him in the nickel spot. And Schottenheimer did go on record saying that their number one need was a nickel. And I think that's what they got with Caleb Downs. And obviously their biggest issue was defense. They were they were last in like yards allowed, I think.
They were like 30th in defense. Yeah. 377 yards allowed. We talked about it early on the show too.
Yeah, awful. I mean, they had game against the Giants. I mean, Russell Wilson absolutely torched us.
Shouldn't have happened,
but I think they definitely got what they need. And I think going back to your point of like, the Raiders, like they're set to win. I don't think they're set to win right now. I think
I didn't say that either. I didn't say they're gonna make the playoffs.
Well, the thing is with the Cowboys, I feel like they kind of gave their team more of a complete look. Our offense, I feel like, is could win us games for sure. We have Aubrey he kind of screwed himself with the contract thing, but we have Aubrey as a kicker. I know the kicker. It's just a
George Pickens just
George Pickens, he just signed his franchise
tag.
Back for we still have CD. CD had a down year last year, but I think defense wise, I know our biggest hole was probably edge rusher, and we got Malachi Lawrence later in the first. Might have been a little reach, but I think that he kind of fills that hole a little bit. And a steal that I would say was LT Overton that I think you mentioned earlier from Bama. He had a better year the previous year, but I think that pick kind of sealed the deal for the Cowboys defensively, and I think that's what kind of made them the winners of this draft. They went out and got what they needed. I understand. I didn't like that trade to the Eagles. In that, I think that was the 12th pick.
Yeah, controversial.
Because they ended up getting Lemon, and I don't agree with that. I know Gino doesn't agree with that at all either. But I think the Cowboys on paper, and I hope this translates to on the field, but I think they had the most complete draft, and I think that's going to bring them success.
So I still think a hole for Dallas is the secondary. Caleb Downs helps a lot with that. Yeah. I'm not going to be naive. But then waiting till the fourth round to draft another corner beside Darren Bland, that's a big hole. That was a big hole all year. Yeah. For Dallas was the cornerback position. Yeah. I personally was something that I didn't like, and if you were going to wait till the fourth round, then try to get McCoy, right? That's why I said if the Cowboys would have drafted McCoy, I'd think a little bit differently now. But something that the Raiders did do, they're in a division with Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert. So they shored up that secondary in this draft, and that was very important. And they got two guys from Arizona, a corner in the second round, and then a safety in the fifth. Why do I mention that? Well, those guys aren't going to have to adjust in terms of chemistry. They're already teammates in college, and where you see most miscommunications in football is in the secondary, so that's out of the window. And then obviously you bring in McCoy as well. Those are three potential impact players for the Vegas Raiders on defense in the secondary in a division, like we said, that can light it up passing the ball. So I really, and they, by the way, we mentioned earlier, not a terrible passing defense last year, so you reinforce that. I really think it comes down to whether or not they can be competent offensively. And why am I kind of certain that they will be? Because of their head coach, Gary Kubiak. And they also showed up the offensive line as well. They got Trey Zune from Texas A&M, a guard who's going to help them run the ball. Fantasy owners, someone in the back probably had Ashton Genty on their fantasy team. I did, and I suffered a lot. And a lot of it didn't have to do with the fact that Ashton Genty was bad at football, but it was that he had no holes on his offensive line. And they've showed up the interior of that offensive line, and they did that here in this draft as well. So I really think that the Raiders, although they're probably in the toughest division in the NFL, which is why I won't pick them to win more than 7-8 games, they can still be very competent and also shock a little bit in terms of winning games that they probably shouldn't or not supposed to, and a lot of it will have to do with the
They also got Brock Bowers back for this season, so, upside for the
It's
Raiders.
interesting how Zoon's going to pan out because I was talking to Jay Costa, our resident NFL guy. Love
Lead
Jay.
analyst.
Shout out Jay.
We're gonna figure out whether or not who's right or wrong when we walk out
once
of
we
here.
talk-
After the show, we're going to go right to Jay.
Yeah.
I mean, Zoon's interesting because he's coming. They want him to play guard, but he played tackle in college. And a big issue I know we talked about on the draft show was these guys having short arms. And I think even for an O-line, I think it's hurts the O-line more, an O-line guy to have shorter arms than a defensive guy. I know we talked a lot about it with Bain. But he had issues in college with pass protection, and I think that's going to be one of the most important things for the Raiders and Mendoza as he's learning, NFL football. And we saw it last year with the O-line. They absolutely ate up Ashton Genty.
Yeah.
And I think that pattern is going to continue this year. But it's definitely going to be interesting how Zoon pans out.
Yeah, one thing I'll say that's going to help out Genty on this point is Mike Washington Jr. mentioned him a little bit. This guy ran a 4.3, so a little bit different. Genty more of a physical guy, but he can fly as well. But to have that contrast in the backfield, I think what's going to be most important is whether or not they can run block. And Indiana, good running game last year in college, that helps out. And with Kirk Cousins, who's probably going to start the first few games to ease Mendoza into it, you need a good running game and a good offensive line. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to be world beaters, but I do like their defense going into next year, and I also like the fact that with the offensive coordinator that they have, the head coach that they have, who was an excellent offensive coordinator, I just trust that Kubiak's going to be able to figure out his side of the ball and at least have a decent offense in year one.
So do you think the Raiders coaching staff is going to be better than the Cowboys?
Well, if you asked me this last year, I would have said 100%. Schottenheimer really did shock me and proved me very
surprising
wrong.
year for him.
I thought Schottenheimer was going to get fired mid-season. I thought it was a terrible hire. I've never seen a team fire their head coach to just hire the offensive coordinator. Well, the Bills actually just did it too, so maybe it's a trend in the NFL. But Eberflus is gone. Now you replace him with the Eagles DC, very young guy. You're going to see some very different schemes compared to Eberflus. I think it's too early to answer that right now. We got to give Schottenheimer the benefit of the doubt, considering we've seen him coach and now got a very hot name defensive coordinator. But the Raiders, on paper, if Kubiak is who he's projected to be, maybe the Raiders will have the better coaching staff.
Yeah, something I want to add. You mentioned earlier the secondary for the Cowboys. I know we got torched, 100%. I'm not gonna lie, but I think a big issue that played into that was that front line, and I think losing Micah Parsons was such a big loss for us, and I think Jerry addressed that in this draft. I mean, if we can get pressure on that on the quarterback, I don't think the secondary is going to get as burned because, again, it creates more pressure. That's all we needed was just pressure. I think that when it comes to the defense, I think your main focus should always be that front line. We talked about it a lot on the draft, too. The game is always won in the trenches.
Yeah.
And I think that if we do have a better front line, that secondary isn't going to be exposed that much.
So, if I may, I guess I want to present this because I guess my entire point is impact. I'm not here arguing that the Cowboys had a bad NFL draft. But what team is going to be impacted most by this draft? And a lot of that probably has to do with the difference in wins from one year to another. Cowboys won 7 games last year. How many more will they win this year? What do you think is the Cowboys? What do you think the Cowboys? I mean, you guys are both fans, so I'm kind of my back against.
I'm not delusional.
But do you think the Cowboys can win 14 games, or will win 14 games?
Probably not.
And make it to the Super Bowl?
I mean, I give them 3. I give them 3 or 4. I would say maybe 4 more wins.
4 more wins.
A lot of the wins, like we lost to Carolina, and Carolina wasn't great at the time that we lost to them. They kind of heated up later in the season, and a lot of those losses were on the defense. We had great offense, and we just needed to complete it. And we definitely could have stolen one in Green Bay. I stayed up until 12 a.m. watching that game just to end it in a tie.
Oh, yeah.
And that it was
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
and forth the whole time.
That was brutal.
If we just got a stop or two, that game would have ended with a Cowboys W for sure.
They should have got the they on the 3-yard line or
Yeah.
something like that in overtime. They should have got it.
Yeah.
So
They
that's a
should've got
4-win jump. That goes from 7 to 11 wins, which is a good from an average team probably to a good team because they had that tie. So 7-9-1, maybe you put them kind of middle of the pack, especially in the NFC. Well, the Raiders, I think, will go from the worst team to an average to maybe above average team if they could. But I think they could, and if they do, it will be based on this draft.
Yeah.
Right.
You think Fernando Mendoza can take that really bad Raiders team to above average by himself, really?
It's not the same team, right? And I think with the new head coach, I mean, Carroll was just way over his skis. I was kind of shocked at the way that Raiders squad looked under him. It was very dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But with a new head coach, new culture, I think the secondary for the Raiders is going to be darn good, and they're going to be able to run the ball. It won't just be Mendoza. I think he'll be comfortable next to Kirk Cousins as well, who, by the way, when he plays, puts up numbers. And for a lot of these guys, it's always year 2 after the ACL where they look better, or at least like kind of good. With Rodgers,
Do you think Cousins is starting game 1?
Yeah, I think Cousins will start the first at least 5 games of the season. So I really think the Raiders will be the team that's most impacted by this draft. There's probably no right or wrong answer. I mean, we'll find out in January of 27, which Gino won't be here for that.
Gabe, do you want final thoughts here?
Final thoughts. Let's go Cowboys. I hope Fernando Mendoza does pan out. Love Mendoza. Rep the Cubans. Love the Cubans. I know Manny's also Cuban.
That's why they're going to be good, because Mendoza's Cuban.
See, but okay, just because he's Cuban, maybe start something for us.
There we go.
Maybe starts a football culture in our country.
All right, guys. So, thank you both. Great points. Great debate. All right. Thank you both for your points. And well, this is the last debate of this Hall Zone season. It was a great one. It was a great. I'm in the control room a lot. I'm usually never on camera. So when I see you guys doing the debates, I always get angry, making sure you guys react. But I never really realized just how hard it was to be on camera with the lights. So I give you huge props for that. Also, Brianna, Beck, for directing the very last episode. My associate sports producer helped me out so much this year. But, not only is this the last debate, it's the last episode that I'll be a part of. I'm gone after
You're not coming back
this
next
episode.
year? For at least one?
Come on. Special appearance.
He's going to be busy, man.
Maybe a special appearance. But
We'll interview you. We'll interview you.
Yeah, maybe. That's up to everyone here. But it was my first time hosting Hall Zone, and I had an absolute blast. And it was a pleasure to serve as the SHU TV executive sports producer for the 2025-2026 year. As the creator of Hall Zone, I started organizing my ideas for this show last summer and produced every episode. Although we had our ups and downs in the sports department, we definitely did. It was an absolute blessing to be able to see this show come to life and to see so many people like you two, Sania as our floor manager, Tyler Centeno as our camera op, in-studio camera op, Brianna Beck, Christine Franco, Cooper Roche, Jay Costa, Paul Brignola. I'm missing so many people.
Yeah.
But to see this show actually come to life, it really is a blessing to see. Because one of the things I told my father before this show went on its first episode is that I wanted to leave a legacy behind at Seton Hall, and we've done that with Campus Nightly. I hope Hall Zone is still on for the next 50 years, and SHU TV is still on for the next 50 years, and of course I'll be tuning into every episode when there is. But thank you all for tuning into Hall Zone. My name is Gino Granato. Have a great night. I'm not doing